Good evening, everyone. I'm very honored to introduce our speaker tonight, Dr. Snjezana Akpinar. She was originally from the Republic of Croatia in the former Yugoslavia. Her father, a well-known Buddhist scholar, went to Sri Lanka in his elder years and became a monk. And Dr. Akpinar and her father came to live at the city of 10,000 Buddhas, where Dr. Akpinar taught for many years at Dharma Buddhist University, later becoming the Dean of Academics and then President of DRBU from 1995 to 2013. And she also serves for many years on the board of directors of Dharma Buddhist Association. Since she is very familiar with this area of the world, Ukraine area, and so we asked her to, within less than a week, to come up with a talk to share some thoughts with us. So very happy to welcome her tonight. I think the Chinese room will be translating, for the Chinese. So Dr. Akpinar, do you want us to show the map right now or later on?
Well, whichever way you prefer. It's good to have the map, but we can have it or not. Whatever is easier. The map is probably a good idea to have. I just hope that people still keep their one-sided attention to the words, but I think we can do both. We are not that strict.
Okay.
Okay. Or you can have me looking at you.
Yes, I think I'll stop sharing for now.
Okay.
And then
here it's asking me it says continue for the meeting. Do I have to press that?
Yes, I guess.
Okay, I see me, myself, and I see you. Wow, success.
It's all yours now.
Okay. Well, good evening, and thank you for listening and coming. I don't know where you are. I suppose we're in the Buddha Hall, virtually or otherwise. And this is an evening lecture. So I will carry on with it. And you have seen a map. We do have one that might help you. At any rate, I will start by discussing an event that was ingrained in my mind. And it happened around 2010, or the first decade of a new millennium. And it was Hillary Clinton in the Kremlin. It was quite an event. And Hillary Clinton came to the Kremlin to talk with the top Russian officials. She was newly elected as the foreign secretary, you would say, of the US. And she came with a big smile on her face, walking in with a sign. And that sign said, reset. In Russian or in the Slavic languages, which is perestroika. Oh, no, she said reset. The sign said reset. And the politicians in the Kremlin kind of looked at it coldly, shall we say. I mean, they were polite, they were nice, they smiled, and she smiled, and she was saying reset. And I didn't think much of it, but somehow I remember it for some reason or the other. She was the new Secretary of State. She was in the Kremlin with her reset. And I didn't think much of it, as I said. So she's saying reset. And then just a few weeks ago, I was watching an interview from Croatia, which is my own country today. There is the Republic of Croatia. And I heard a person there, somebody that was being interviewed, use the word resetirati, which in my language, it sounds kind of funny. I said, oh, I know what it means, but why are they using this American word in the middle of Croatian? I mean, there are other words to use. And one of these words is prestrojka, which is the buzzword those days, in the days of Hillary Clinton. Prestrojka, everybody was talking about prestrojka. If you happen to be from the Slavic part of the world, because you know what prestrojka means, it's reset. So I was saying, what's going on here? Why are these people saying reset? These people saying prestrojka, I can get that. One is English, one is Slavic, let's say. But then the other day when I heard a Croat politician, not really politician, but somebody like that, discuss the same thing for something else, he was using the word resetirati. And I said, well, resetirati is prestrojka, but why is he using resetirati instead of prestrojti, which would be the Slavic word for it? And then something occurred to me. Don't forget, I'm a linguist. I like languages. So I think in those terms. So I said, what's going on? And then I understood the whole thing as being politics, nothing more but gentle politics. In Croatia, they are using the English word reset, resetirati or reset or whatever. Had it been a broadcast from Serbia, which now is split from each other, they're two different countries, they would have used the word prestrojti or prestrojka, a Slavic word. So that thing sort of, it didn't upset me, but it made me wonder, why are they playing around with this word all over again? But the picture of Hillary Clinton in the Kremlin with a smile on her face, talking to these Russian great politicians, somewhat amused me at the day when that was going on. And I said, what does she think? But then I remembered as I saw it the other day, and it was very vivid in my mind. I don't know why it was vivid, but it was there, ingrained in my head, this picture of Hillary Clinton in the Kremlin. And I said, what's going on here? Then I discovered, as I was thinking about that, just thinking in my mind, now this is just 2 weeks ago, that is a very subtle form of politics. You know, they were, everybody was talking about prestrojka, it was a buzzword. And Hillary Clinton, in the days when the buzzword was prestrojka, actually came up with an English word, reset. And that was a way of telling the Russians that she was interfacing with, that it is a reset, but it is also prestrojka. So why do we have to say a Slavic word when there's an English word? She is an American and she speaks English and she's going to translate this. Remember, I am a translator and I am a linguist. And that thing hit me. What Hillary Clinton was doing was doing her diplomacy. She was brand new, elected as the foreign affairs person. And so she was doing that. And I didn't get it then. I got it only now. Hillary Clinton was doing a very good thing with words. Remember, words are my thing. My vehicle, let's call it. And by changing the language, she told them, well, yes, this resetting thing is very good. The perestroika is fine, but it's our perestroika too, an American perestroika. It's not only Russian. And she said it very nicely, very, very gently, with words and a smile. So much for Hillary Clinton and her reset. And I didn't get it until not too long ago that was a part of foreign politics. She said, we are going to reset these things in our American way, not your perestroika, but our perestroika. She didn't say it, but that's what was behind that message without an explicit explanation. And remember, Buddhists have the noble silence. So what is the noble silence? And what is, in view of Buddhism, what is this kind of diplomacy, which I think was very smart, frankly. There was nothing wrong with that. So in order to give you a talk about today in the Ukraine, I will try to do it in that way with these buzzwords that keep appearing in various languages, and how the word itself, the buzz of the word, actually moves things around. We're not even aware of that. And it is not bad, actually. It's much better than throwing bombs at each other. But the sounds of these words are what kind of intrigues me, let's call it. So with that connection, let's start. In the first of these buzzwords was Solidarnost, if you can remember. Maybe not all of you. I'm reminding myself of an old teacher I had, and he would keep talking and say, some of you remember and some of you don't. Most of us were born in 1939 or 40, and what he was remembering was 1912. So we didn't. But anyway, so I'm in the same position now. Anyway, what happened is that the buzzword in the 80s, which made a big splash, was a word known as Solidarnost. And maybe some of you, again, I'm doing my old age thing, maybe some of you remember that buzzword, Solidarnost, Solidarnost, Solidarnost. Solidarnost was a union, trade union in Poland, with the name Solidarnost. And everybody can more or less understand that Solidarnost means solidarity in the Western world. So Solidarnost was actually a pro-Russian. This was in the Russian sphere of things in Poland in those days. And it was the name of a trade union, a very strong trade union. And the person who was at the head of that trade union was Lech Walesa. Some of you might remember him. Anyway, Lech Walesa was at the top of a trade union, a very communist trade union called Solidarnost. And he turned his Solidarnost, he opened up the idea of what is Solidarnost. It's a trade union, it's socialist, it's Russian, more or less, or coming from the East, behind the Iron Curtain, but he's turning the whole concept around with the meaning of that word and what he was saying. So it was Solidarnost, and the head, again, a socialist institution run by somebody who's from the Eastern Bloc, let's say, Lech Walesa, with words into something else. The Solidarnost he was talking about was a Solidarnost with the West, between East and West. He didn't say it that much, but he turned with that word and the energy of that word, he turned it in a different direction. So the Polish socialist, communist, you could say, trade union that became a buzzword changed the direction of the communist course, you could say, from Eastern Europe westward. Now, being a Buddhist myself and coming from the ex-Yugoslavia, from that background, because I grew up in West, or part of me grew up in West Yugoslavia, which was a country between East and West. Now, that's a long story, but it was a country that had 1 foot here, 1 foot there, shall we say. And so coming from that kind of background, I taught myself, as everybody was very happy with the word Solidarność, 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 it's that the Iron Curtain was being opened. It's open, finished, falala, we'd have no more Iron Curtain. And I thought at that time, and now I can agree with my own thoughts, not so fast. It won't happen as fast as we would like it, or some of us would like it. So that's my starting point. What happened to the Iron Curtain, and did it lift or did it not lift? Or is it slowly lifting, but in which direction? So having these thoughts in my head and these words, I will take some steps backward now and start off in Ukraine, in the Ukrainian territory, exactly in the year 1944. It's a long time ago, but at that point, there was a great conference held in Ukraine. It was in Yalta, in the territory of what is Crimea, and Crimea is firmly connected to the Ukraine. It's a sort of appendage of the Ukraine, but it's still the Ukraine. So there was a conference on Crimea at that time in 1945, I think it was, that foresaw, it wasn't quite over yet, but foresaw the coming to an end, the ending of World War II. This was 1945, I think. And the top politicians, the West, what we considered allies of that period, held a great conference in Yalta, which is Crimea, which is in Crimea and which is the Ukraine. And the three top politicians had a conference. They considered themselves allies, all of them. It was FDR, Winston Churchill, and Stalin. So Stalin was an ally. Whatever it is, Stalin was an ally. And after that great conference in Yalta, which people like me who lived in Yugoslavia and so on, know Yalta very well. We keep invoking it, or kept invoking it all along. What happened in Yalta? What happened in the Ukraine? What happened in that conference in the Ukraine on Crimea? Yalta itself is a very, very nice city. It's a resort area. So no wonder they had a nice conference in a nice resort area in the Ukraine in the city of Yalta. Not too long ago, we celebrated I think it was the 75th anniversary, 3 years ago, of Yalta. And another buzzword came out of that conference. It was the conference of the big three, which was FDR, Churchill, and Stalin. So Stalin was an ally in that according to that conference, and they had a nice conference. Now today we don't think of Stalin as having been an ally of the West all this time, but at that point they had the conference. They were all nice and polite and smiling and everything else, and then after that conference was over, It was Stalin, remember, Churchill, and FDR. After the conference, or during the conference even, Churchill came up with another buzzword, a word that was never heard before. And he said, a great iron curtain has fallen on this world, on the world of the East. So the Iron Curtain is another such buzzword that we all, even now, we pretty much know about that buzzword, the Iron Curtain. So what is the Iron Curtain? And what did Churchill mean by it? Huh? We shall see. I mean, we know he called it the Iron Curtain, and everybody followed. Like we followed the idea of Solidarność, like we follow many things. The buzzword was the Iron Curtain. And is now, I'm asking myself, is now that buzzword falling apart, disappearing? When did that start moving? Because words like thoughts, because words represent thoughts pretty much, and have an impression on us that we don't see, but they're there through the sound of the words. So so that's what I'm wondering. I'm still wondering how much of an influence do words have, how much they ingrain, we can say, to our minds. Then I think we haven't gotten rid of the Iron Curtain yet, although we think we have, and we think that Solidarność opened wide the door to this mysterious Iron Curtain. Actually, what we do is we yearn for it to be true. And yearning is the issue here. If we are Buddhist, we can think with our instinct, our yearning is that it be true and it be good. We are yearning for a good as human beings. Not only human beings, any sentient being in this world yearns for something good. So when we go into our feelings, we think, will it be good? Will it be okay? Yay, it is okay, and it is almost okay, but not really sometimes. So being a Buddhist, it's very important not to run after anything, have the noble silence in us and think on our own without the buzzwords, let's say. But that yearning is something that any sentient being has, whether it's a man, woman, child, elephant, or even a worm. He has we all have, if we are sentient, we have a yearning for something good. And that's what it is. And even as an elephant, as I say, and the worm has that yearning. That is what makes us sentient beings. Now, of course, human beings are quite different. It's a field, let's say, or a district of sentience is human beings. They're quite different from a worm, but the sentience, the final hope, is the same. We all yearn for something nice and good and life to go on. That's what it is. So since we are not elephants, and since we are humans, and since human beings are capable of understanding words, words are a very important factor of our yearning. So that's what actually we have to remember. We are yearning for that, most of us, for that Iron Curtain to come off. Now, so much for the yearning in sentient beings. Now, on the other side, if we look at all of this, we have the Ukraine as a country, as a piece of land, right? It rests on a territory that we would call Ukraine, as the Ukrainians would say. But Ukraine is firm, it's not moving. What is moving, what is fluid in all of this are the seas, the Black Sea, And if we have the map, I think you might have it somewhere. And the Black Sea, the Sea of, okay, I think the map might come up now. Yeah, see, we have the Black Sea, and then we have the Sea of Azov here. Wait a minute. The Black Sea is the Sea of, where are we? Yeah, the Black Sea, the Sea of Azov, this little sea over here, yeah, and the Mediterranean. Right here, this whole big thing that is fluid. There is no question, and it moves, and that tells us that our whole globe moves actually according to the sun, and we can't stop that. That is one thing human beings cannot do, no matter how sentient they may be. They can do a lot of things, but moving seas is kind of impossible. That's somebody else's problem or something else's, we don't know. Anyway, we have the Black Sea, and the entrance to the Black Sea is the isthmus or the narrow strait that's called the Bosphorus. And on the other sea here, we have another narrow strait that's called Kerch. So these are two straits that move the fluidity of a sea. Okay, yes, so we can see it here again. See, you have the Black Sea here, and the Sea of Kerch, right here, the Sea of Azov, and the two straits, Istanbul and Kerch. But around the Black Sea, lots of things go on. But the biggest country there, firmly on the Black Sea, is the Ukraine. Nobody can deny that. The Ukraine, the Moldova, or Moldova as it's called, and all of that, that is all Slavic land. And everybody is very proud of the Ukraine, if you are a Slav. But what makes them proud? You can be proud because there are many other Slavs in there, if you really want to think of it. But the reason that it makes the Slavs proud of Ukraine is the civilization. You know, they had a great city, a great civilization, which many people consider to be a root civilization of the Slavs. And that is the city of Kiev. Can we see the city of Kiev somewhere here? Yeah. So many people are connected to the city of Kiev, thinking Kiev is the beginning of a group of people that are Slavs and that created a huge civilization, a huge city. Civilization means a togetherness in Kiev, and think that this is the beginning of a Slavic civilization. Nobody's claiming that that is true or not true, but Kiev is perceived like that. And when you perceive something in those terms, you think that the Slavs moved from east westward. However, so that's it is definitely a great city and a great root of a city, of civilization. But when you study, if you happen to come from these Slavic areas, where did the Slavs come from, actually? People will assume they came from the east, finished. But on the other hand, if you really study it in many places, you will know that the word Slav was actually mentioned long ago in the 6th century or 5th, somewhere like that, but it's a record, so you can't deny it because it's mentioned on paper or on parchment or on whatever, that the concept of a Slav was mentioned in an area that's called Carantania. Now that's nobody, if you're not a Slav, let's say, or studying these things, you wouldn't know where Carantania was. But this place that's called Ljubljana now on this map, that is where apparently Carantania was. And Carantania is the place where the Slavs were mentioned as a set of people. They are recorded. So did they start in Carantania in the 5th century, 6th century? Did they start somewhere else in Kiev or wherever? We really don't know, but Carantania is where they were mentioned first. So people usually in school would learn that the Slavs were mentioned and recorded first in Carantania. And so that's another thing that people do know if they come from this area, which used to be Yugoslavia, let's say, or probably all the other Slavic countries. So you have these two positions, really. Kiev was mentioned a little bit later on, but nonetheless, did the Slavs come from the east? Did the Slavs come from the west and inhabited this whole area that we call the Slavs? We really don't know. And in my day, when you went to school, you learned this as a fact that was not to be questioned. The Slavs came from Carantania, and that's it. And I'm from ex-Yugoslavia, which is what you see, Zagreb and Belgrade, that was also one Slavic country. So how did the Slavs spread? And who was on the outset, the person who or the group of people that spread? Today, since also our theories, as people say, have been liberated somehow, we are allowed to say we don't know. But a few years earlier, people did not say we don't know. It's a theory, it's written down in books. You don't ask questions about it. That's how it is. So we are at that point now when we are liberating our theories, let's say, and we are also liberating people, or whatever we think they are, behind the Iron Curtain. So we all have this yearning in ourselves to know the real thing. And we kind of know that we don't know. We know that we really don't know, or maybe we do know. Maybe it's deep inside us and in our minds, as we would call it, and we can't express it. We don't know the words. The thoughts might be there, but the words for those thoughts are really not there, or we can't find them yet. And that, if you are a good Buddhist, you will know that that is something that when the Buddha was asked such similar questions, he would say, we really don't know. We sense it, but we really don't have the courage to climb these mind mountains that we don't see, but that are in us, and figure it out. So we have first, if you're a good Buddhist, let's say, but even something else, you have something that you would call the Chatukotika. That's a good Buddhist learns that because that's part of the thing you learn. And the Chatukotika is something that has 4 corners. And these 4 corners need to be there. We need to see them and walk through them slowly in order to be able to say whether something is true or wrong. So what is true? What is wrong? We can say it is true. We start out slowly in our minds, whatever our minds are, but we are asking what are our minds basically and what are our yearnings. And you go and say, yes, maybe. And then but we cannot explain it. We don't have the words. See, I'm talking about words mostly. So we can say yes. Then we walk to the next corner and say, no, maybe no. Maybe we can, maybe they're there, but we don't think they're there because there's nothing inside us. Then you go to the third corner and say, maybe It's both. Maybe we know them and we can't explain them, and that creates a little knot there. But you say, maybe we can, maybe it's yes, maybe it's none. Maybe none of it is true. And by then, you fly in the air. You just don't know what you're doing and where you are. To me, that is one of the most relevant parts of being a Buddhist. The four corners in Sanskrit, that would be the Chatukotika. It is yes, no, maybe yes to both, maybe no to both. And by saying that, you are figuratively closing your four corners in a handkerchief, let's say, or whatever it is in your mind, and you fly off and you can't give an answer. So answers we still don't know yet, then we have to say. So, and then you come to different ideas. You fly along with your ideas. Are they inside, outside? Are they flying along? We don't know. Anyway, so much for this theorizing of mind. So the Slavs, according to also the Ukrainians, let's say, are mentioned in the 6th century after Christ, CE of our era, in Carantania, which is the northeast corner of ex-Yugoslavia, let's call it. That country right now is an independent republic. It is the independent Republic of Slovenia. And until about 3 years ago, it was a federal country called Yugoslavia. That there were 6 republics that were connected, a federation. And now, of course, they are not a federation anymore. So to me, that created a problem, not a problem, but let's say an unpleasant feeling. The country fell apart, or these federations fell apart, and there was an ugly war there. And what really, okay, can you see them? Ljubljana, that's where Carantania would have been, 6th century. And then in the Ukraine, you have Kiev, and that's another center like that. This is where it was mentioned first, and this is where a civilization, a group of people, a city appeared, let's say, first, or we think so. Now there's all this land in between. So the whole thing split in political. Today, that whole thing is known. The buzzword today is ethno-political. So these are ethno-political territorial pieces. That would be the right way of calling all this that I'm talking about. So today, maybe in 10 years, 20 years, nobody will remember ethno-political territorial pieces. But today, that is the big word. If you are a scientist, a scholar, whoever you are, you will talk about ethno-political pieces. And there is a long list. I just mentioned a few things that you could say if what is ethnopolitical and how did this buzzword ethnopolitical territorial come to be? Is it a scientific word? Is it a political word? Is a political word scientific? But let's not do that. Let's not go so fast. The ethnopolitical territorial pieces are now separated, and we know that. And the word is used by politicians, historians, economists, and scholars all together. And they live in various cities. They don't live in small villages, but that is what makes them one, all this group of people with different interests. And in order to understand it, they are still looking for the right word, a word that would make us somewhat understand who we are as human beings. But okay, we are ethnopolitical people, let's say. And what we are searching for is a better life. There's no question. Even any sentient being will do that, even a worm. But today, what we are running after, and what is our buzzword, is efficiency. You all know that efficiency is the big thing. You have to be efficient. Don't have all this mess around you. So this efficiency, which is our buzzword of the present day, let's call it, was actually inaugurated when Lech Walesa and his Solidarność started running after something that we can call economic liberalism. Liberate economics, make it spread around, and maybe we will get there. We will be a better set of people. So that energy of this liberalism and economic energy, let's call it, or just liberal buzzwords, is now kind of nestling, you say, getting together, unfortunately, around the Ukraine. So all this liberalism, liberation, democracy, and so on is kind of nestling, coming like a strong wind is blowing it into the Ukraine. And the Ukraine, if you remember, I don't know where you come from, but people my age in the West and even in Russia, I think, would think of the Ukraine as the breadbasket of Europe. And people will still agree with that, the breadbasket, because the Ukraine, the area that goes from the Black Sea to the, here we go, this area from the Black Sea all the way to the Baltic Sea, this whole area is very fertile. And if you look at it, most of these people will think they are Slavs. And they go together as Slavs until they come to the Baltic Sea. And then they sort of branch off, or they're the Finns, the Lithuanians, which we have to admit are not Slavs. But anyway, that's what it is. So this whole area from the Black Sea to the Baltics is very, very fertile. That and Warsaw and Poland, this is very fertile. But when you go south from that area, there are mountains, the Alps, we call them the Alps. And there are mountains that spread throughout sort of Europe and end up on the Black Sea with the so-called Carpathian Mountains, who fall off into the Black Sea, we could say, here around Bucharest and so on. So these are areas that, in my view, have created knots in the minds of people. We are Slavs from the East, we are Slavs from the West, and so on and so forth. So what made it even worse is the fact, so this is all ethnicity, all of these people are Slavs, but what has made a worse mess of it is the word faith. And people didn't talk very much about faith in the communist world because it was declared non-existent. What are we going to do with God? And they equated God with faith. Now, faith could be God, it could be a faith in God, it could be a faith in a human being, it could be a faith in an energy, we don't know. I frankly don't know. But the concept of faith became a very, very contested buzzword, let me say, and depending on your religion, because faith then connects with religion. Once I gave a talk long ago to the DRBU saying that what is religion? And you can say that religion is an alignment of certain groups of people with a faith, with a belief. Now, between faith and belief, if you talk about words, there's a lot of difference. Because yes, faith is embedded in a field that we can call, belief. And belief is embedded very firmly in sentient beings. And the faith of a sentient beings tells us the good will prevail. That's what we hope for, right? But there's more to it than that. We start thinking, all of us, is it really going to be bad? Is it going to be good? And faith creates a doubt. And that doubt is, I would venture to say, what makes us human beings sentient and human. That doubt creates a tension between yes and no. Is it really so? Is it not so? And there is a wonderful philosopher from Spain that lived in the States called Santayana, who has a book that he wrote at the end of his life almost. It's called, see, now I'm an old lady, so I forget things. It's called, it'll come to me, I'm sorry. It's called Faith and the Animal Mind. Yeah, I think that's about the name of it. And he wrote about that very well, very clearly. I recommend it. He wrote it not just before his death, but that was the last thing he did. And I think it would not be a bad idea to read it. And he understood the difference between a human faith of a sentient human being and a sentient non-human being. The animal mind and faith and belief. And that is also a very, very good thing to do. He understood it in his old age, because you have to live a long time to understand these things somehow. And that he was trying to tell the world that seeking that faith, seeking the truth of that faith, or any faith, it can be indeed a huge force that creates that tension and pushes an energy, our energy, a human energy, a sentient energy, in various directions. So an artist, somebody who writes or paints or does anything, can express that thought that I just said, that we humans are sentient and that we don't really know what we're doing, where we're going. It may be good, it may be bad, we are trying, that's no question, but we don't know where we're going. It's not a very cheerful suggestion, but it is somewhat. Anyway, there is a Polish fellow, or a number of Polish fellows. I remember that Walesa and Solidarność came out of Poland. In between the Lech Walesa, who was a socialist, communist, shall we say, union leader, and who became then the president or son of Poland. But there was another very, very good movie, and movies and any kind of art can express that feeling, not with one word, but with pictures, shall we say, with a stage or something. When I was young, there was a very good movie going around by a Polish author. His name was Andrzej. There were actually two, an author and a producer, something like that. Anyway, the main guy there was called Andrzej Wajda. And the team, at the head of the team, was Jerzy Andrzejewski. It was a team of artists, let's call it, movie makers. And they created many movies, but the most important one that stuck to my mind at that point in the it was 50s, late 50s, early 60s, was called Ashes and diamonds. It was an excellent movie. If you can find it, you will see that is explaining this yearning of human beings for something good and how it can really go awry, how it may work and may not work. So, but the mere translation, again, since I'm a translator, I look at translation, it was translated into English as ashes and diamonds. It should have been translated ashes and the diamond, if I were doing the translation, because the whole point of it, and there's a nice picture in it, is all these people, after total devastation of the world, of whatever, were running around a huge pile of ashes, a whole city in ashes, looking for the diamond, the tiny diamond. And there we are all traipsing around looking in ashes just for one single diamond. Now that thing wasn't conveyed in the English translations. If the English translation had been ashes or ash is a collective noun, and the diamond, it would have been better, because we are all traipsing today and for a long time among this devastation of ashes of the world, looking for this tiny diamond. And that was the point of the movie. There was a beautiful picture of people walking on ashes, looking for this invisible diamond that may or may not be there. But the whole translation in English was actually a misstep. If they had said ash and the diamond, people might have understood it a little bit better. Also, people, not in the States, but in a country that was reduced to ashes in World War II, you could understand it. And I had a long conversation once with a Polish friend who was in Yugoslavia at the day about that thing, about ashes and diamonds. And so it is, again, the language, the form of the words. You can say, in English, it was better to say ashes and diamonds. And it's okay, ashes, we know it's a collective thing. There's not one ash, there's many of them. You can't talk about one ash, you talk about ashes. But diamonds, in English, you can't say the diamond, one diamond. That wasn't conveyed in my view, but that's me. And so I had that conversation with a Polish colleague of mine who was studying languages like me. And we agreed that the Slavs could understand that very well, and many other people could. But why did the Americans, or the English at that point, I think it was an American translation of the movie, not convey that? The translation was inaccurate in my view. Remember, I am a linguist and I like to teach people how to translate. So that's where I'm coming from. So, but the picture was very vivid. A devastated world searching for something minuscule in the diamonds. It's not very uplifting, but that's what we are trying to do today. Now, do we have the courage to say that it may happen or it may not happen? Or just we can keep on looking for that diamond and maybe we will find and maybe we won't. Now, the noble silence here, as a Buddhist, good or bad, I don't know, but as a Buddhist, I can understand, and I'm wondering even right now, wherever I go, about the noble silence. Because for me, the noble silence is one of the trademarks of Buddhism, of being a Buddhist. And then, if with that kind of idea in my mind, I accept the concept of individuation, an individual, which is not something that the Iron Curtain type people would really care for. But an individual is one. But is it a one? It is a group of people, each one being an individual. And that concept brought something fresh, let's call it, to this thought of what is the one. Who is the one? Is it just the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha? Is it a number of Buddhas, bodhisattvas? Even in Buddhism, you can look at it and say there is the Theravada tradition and there is the Mahayana tradition. In the Theravada tradition, they will tell you there is only one bodhisattva, and that is the specific Buddha that is going to become, that has seen the whole thing and refused to go away, refused to let go of that, refused to go of the world, basically, in order to help it. Now, that's a long, long conversation or silence we can have about that. And that silence, although I'm talking and I should be shutting up, is there because we really don't know. And we are still wondering. So we are wondering and we are hoping. And Buddhists are very often accused of being pessimists, which to me is really not true. We are wondering, but we are silent. To me, that is the best that one can do for the Buddhists and for the concept of being a Buddha or becoming a Buddha even. And so that is not that easy to figure out. But nonetheless, let's go back to Kiev before I take off on some unwanted exits. So there is the city of Kiev. It's an ancient, old, civilized place. A city considered to be a starting point for people leaving the so-called breadbasket. And it is close to the Black Sea. And they see themselves right now in Kiev as having the potential to possibly answer the question of what is that hope and how do we go about getting there. They are, the city itself is almost completely separated from Russia and everything else. And it's in the Ukraine, there is no question, it's the center of the Ukraine. And they can disperse if they want to. They can run away or they can change their way of thinking, but they are stubbornly, most of them, being set on not moving, on being still, sitting there as a way of explaining that they have no enemies. They are Buddhists, actually. If you look at that, they have no enemies. They are not going to attack, and they are not going to confront Putin like that. Yeah. So that's where we're at. But that gives Russia, today's Russia, and its leader, just its leader mostly, because the Russians probably feel the same way. This idea that he has to hold on to his ideas if he wants to stop it from having a war. So he's judged, generally speaking, of being greedy for power. But as good Buddhists, can we ask, is it greed that's pushing Putin along or not? We can ask that question. And I don't know, because I'm not a Buddha, I'm not a bodhisattva, and I'm not a politician. But we can, if we sit there still right now, silently, we can say probably, I mean, that's me again, so don't really listen. I should be not talking. But Putin is he moved by greed? Is he moved by a necessity to create peace? But something is moving him. Both of them are moving them, and they're moving all of us. And on the other hand, you have Zelensky, who's saying, I'm sitting in Kiev and I'm not moving because I don't want people to think that I am greedy and attacking. So what do we do? I don't know. I wish I knew, but I cannot tell you that. So it is a combination. I like to think of that as having one stone that's not very big and having two people sitting on the same stone, Putin and Zelensky. And I think that would be a political lecture if I went further than this. But they are, between the two of them, two people that one could think of it as two people that both want peace. And Zelensky at this point is not accusing Putin. He is, without speaking, he might be accusing Putin. And Putin, on the other hand, is billowing out these words that are very, very political. He's talking about the fascists of Ukraine and saying they are still there, they're doing this to us and so on. Zelensky is not saying anything like that, but he is sitting in Kiev very strongly. And it's true that will he win just by sitting there? We hope he will. I mean, I hope he will, because he is trying to create some kind of peace. And we hope that by sitting strongly and not saying anything bad, trying to understand where Putin's fears are coming from. I would think that. I really don't know. And how do we do that? But if you look at the geography, the map of this area that we call Ukraine, I think if we see, and that will be, okay, this area, and we go into Belarus and up to the Baltic Sea, all of that, the Belarus, for example, and Minsk were really connected with the Ukraine. And then the Eastern forces overpowered them and separated from the Ukraine. And people will tell you, when I listen to various lectures and things from my country, and you see my country would have been here, they tell you that the very word Belarus is a political issue because of how it's spelled and because of the fact that you can call it Belarus or Belarus. That's again language and sounds that come in play. And they will tell you, yeah, some people call it Belarus, some people call it Belarus. But even that is something that's disturbing, because if you put a y in there, in Belarus or whatever, then you become a Catholic or Catholic. And if you leave it as Belarus or whatever, you become Orthodox, a Russian Orthodox. So here comes religion in it. And just by the way you pronounce something means you are slightly different from the other one. And I listened to a whole talk the other day about that, about how to call that country Belarus is an insult to Catholics. Come on. But it seems to be so. And if you go into the history of religion, you know that the religions have that problem. We are supposedly Christians all, but you have Orthodox Christians and Catholic Christians, right? Orthodox and Catholic. And then you also have the Protestant Christians. The Protestants, I like to say, protest. So there are many Christians in the West that are Protestants. I am simplifying it. But between the Catholics and the Orthodox, there is a division, and that created wars. Let us not think that it's all perfect. Definitely, that's the problem. So the Orthodox, they have their patriarch, and their patriarch is in the city of Constantinople. Still today, although it's a Turkish country and they're Muslims, the patriarch of the Greek Orthodox lives in Istanbul, because that's where he started out, and nobody ever kicked him out. But he is called Greek Orthodox. But every other Orthodox country, their religion is linked to their nation. So you cannot be a Greek Orthodox and be a Bulgarian, or be a Greek Orthodox and be a Romanian. You have to be Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, this Orthodox, that Orthodox. It's connected to nation. And that is causing, it has been causing, it's still causing trouble, and much of the effort goes there. You have the patriarch is only the patriarch of the Greek Orthodox. Now, if you happen to be, let's say, Serbian and Orthodox, which you would probably be if you are Serbian, then you have to have a patriarch who is the patriarch of the Serbian Orthodox. If you are Russian, you have to have a patriarch of the Russian Orthodox Church. And then to go even further, so you cannot possibly be Greek Orthodox and be, let's say, Russian. Doesn't work, because the country is the important thing. And so that also is split up in many, many ways. And the funniest thing, and I experienced that because I used to live in Turkey, in Istanbul, Constantinople. And when I was there, I dealt with the Greek Orthodox patriarch of that day. This was 50 years ago, because I was working for, at that time, Yugoslav consulate, and I knew Turkish. But the patriarch of the Orthodox Church in Istanbul is the patriarch of the Greek Orthodox. And in the days prior to that, any Orthodox person who came from Serbia and was not necessarily Serbian Orthodox, but considered that, didn't have his, he had to go to the next best available patriarch, because the Serbian patriarch did not exist in Istanbul, but a Greek patriarch did exist. So all the records, the births, the deaths, whatever, were in the Greek Orthodox arch, or whatever it was, patriarchy. So whenever I had something to do there, I would have to go and deal with them. So they were Greeks in Istanbul as Greek Orthodox, but the Serbs who happened to be in Istanbul because of business or whatever would be baptized in that church, which was Greek Orthodox. It really wasn't true, but that was the best they could do, just to baptize themselves. And that happened. And I was friendly with these people, the Greek Orthodox patriarch, who was actually Turkish. His nationality was Turkish, and he had no problem with that. He spoke very good Turkish and so on. But at that point, when I was there, the people there at one point, I think this was in the early 60s, very early 60s, a group of people came deciding that they wanted to have their own nationalist Orthodox church, because they belonged to the Serbian Orthodox Church. Okay, but they didn't want to belong to the Serbian Orthodox Church. They wanted to have their own national Orthodox Church that would be Macedonian. Today, Macedonia is also a mess, but nonetheless, at that point, the only way they could attain that is by paying the Greek patriarch in Istanbul a sum of gold coins. That's how you became a nationalist Orthodox Macedonia. So the Macedonian, not patriarch, but the Macedonian top leader of religion knew that he had to pay so many gold coins in order to become his own nationalist Orthodox person and church and country. And so I was translating for them, and they see into Turkish. So there I was with these Macedonians who wanted not to be part of the Serbian Orthodox Church, but they have their own Orthodox Church. And it's only the patriarch in Istanbul, who was the Greek Orthodox patriarch, who could allow that to happen if somebody gave him the money, because that was the rule back from God knows from the beginning of the world. And so these poor people came, and it was very interesting to have to deal with all of that. And I'm of course not Orthodox at all. I mean, I don't even belong there, because I belong to the western part of Yugoslavia, which is Catholic mostly, not everybody, but and I had really nothing to do with it. But that has its problems too. The Catholics, I discovered, also are divided into Roman Catholics and Greek Catholics. So that too doesn't really work. So if you're a Roman Catholic, you consider the Pope to be your head of your religion. If you're a Greek Catholic, you consider the patriarch in Istanbul to be the head of your religion. So what do you do? And that's and the Serbs then decided, we are the head of this whole Orthodox thing for the for Yugoslavia, let's say. So first you have to become a Serb Catholic or a Serb Orthodox, and then you join through us the Patriarch of Istanbul. So it's a tremendous mess. You just think, my goodness. And then in the West, in Ukraine in particular, and some countries around there, people who really were Slavs, were Catholics, didn't want to let go of the Orthodoxy because of a calendar. The whole thing circles around the calendar. When do you celebrate Easter? When do you celebrate this? When do you celebrate that? And so it is such a messy thing. And it is mostly as when do you celebrate a certain holiday? That's all it is. And it is, when you look at all of this, you really can't believe it. And the Ukraine has a number of people who really from the very beginning decided that they don't want this mess. Not the whole of Ukraine, but there's a substantial number of people who decided that they are going to be both. They are going to accept the Pope in Yugoslavia, in Rome, and the Patriarch in Istanbul. So they're called Greek Catholics. And it keeps going. I think it's time to stop though, because I'm going. But I was trying to tell you how messy our human thoughts can be. And how do we make them less messy? Can we do it? I don't know. I wish I could. But we can hope. That's the only thing I can tell you to do. And then there's much more that I could say, but that would take another hour and a half. So that's a little bit too much. So I think we should stop. Maybe there are some questions. Do we have time for questions? No.
Yeah, I guess if there's anyone who has a question, you could put it in the chat box really quickly.
Okay, chat, I do have one question. It seems if I click on it, I will find it, right? Stacy, chat, direct message. We can hear you. I don't know what the message is.
That's from before.
But that's from before.
Yeah.
So Let's try chat again.
Yeah,
It's
I don't
about
see any.
time.
I don't
Can't
see
hear
any
the
questions.
Chinese room. We heard you. Hello. Okay. How are you? How are you? I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, that's it.
Yeah. So
So I was just trying to tell you that we don't know what will happen because we're not prophets, and prophets actually come by, I guess, every so often, but very, very hard. If we believe to the Buddha, who said to the deity of his day, when the deity asked the Buddha, the deity being a god and the Buddha being a human being, and he was perplexed and asked the Buddha, what do we do about this messy world? And the Buddha said, there is a potential, but not even the greatest of human beings, of heroes, can get there. It's very, very hard. So that's my answer for the Ukraine today. And we get there.
there's one question from
Okay.
Sarah Owen that
Yeah.
she's asking if Putin is a Russian Orthodox and if that has anything to do with all of this.
Oh, Putin, come on. I mean, Putin decided, I mean, maybe he is. I don't want to say anything bad about the guy, but it seems to me that Putin, if you were talking about Gorbachev or somebody like that, you could say yes. But Putin has embraced religion now because everybody else in Russia seems to like it, or many people do. That's my nasty answer to it. But maybe he is religious. In fact, his mother apparently comes from the Black Sea, from that area of the Ukraine, which doesn't mean anything. But I don't know. I don't know what Putin wants, whether it's sheer greed or whether it's the hope that he will make it a better Russia. I don't know. But he is originally, historically, his family, whatever there is, they are Russian Orthodox, yes. But he was also the head of the KGB. And so there's no reason of being the head of or working for the KGB and not being Orthodox, even in the days before they were allowed to accept the fact that they could be religious. Now they can, I think.
Okay.
So I don't know.
There is one more question, and it's a little bit political.
Yeah.
Do you think Zelensky should negotiate or keep resisting? To negotiate might lead to...
Zelensky, to his credit, said, I'm negotiating with anybody who wants to negotiate. That he's a comedian, let's not forget that too. And I like comedians because they can kind of sit away from everything and laugh at it. And that in itself is a good thing. But I don't know whether he is not negotiating. He is negotiating as if somebody is willing to negotiate. Whether, yeah, I think he is. He's sitting there in Kiev saying, come and negotiate with me. That he is doing, you could say that. But many people negotiate. There was, if you remember, if you look at politics and politicians, there are names like Tymoshenko, which is Belarus now. But anyway, Tymoshenko was the Ukraine, the lady with the braids. She was a nationalist. That's why she wore her braids. Tymoshenko. There is Yevtushenko. Some of you might remember Yevtushenko. He has some connections with the Ukraine, and he was a poet, and he ended up in America. And people my age might remember, I think he died in Kansas. So if you see any name that has a Shenko at the end, Enko, you can see that they are either from the Ukraine or from Belarus.
Okay, another political question.
Oh, I tried not to be political.
I know. But anyways, you can use your Chatukotiko. Putin was forced because NATO and US have provided armaments to Ukraine in Western Ukraine, and Putin cannot do anything as it is getting worse.
He cannot do anything? I don't know. I mean, I am definitely not a politician. And I can see, if I really try hard, I can see that Putin, for one thing, he wants the Ukraine to be Russia. That's obvious. I mean, we can all look at it and say, why is he claiming the Ukraine for Russia? So why? I don't know. Well, obviously, because he is a politician. He's in charge of Russia, and he apparently thinks he's doing a good job. We could say that he thinks like that, or whether it's true or not, but he's attempting. But if he starts bombing, which I hope he won't do, because he thinks that that's the only way to save the whole story and the whole thing, I don't think it will work. I don't know. Maybe it will work in the long run. I don't know. It is now, if we're going to go into politics, it is that they are now inventing a different methodology, whoever they are. And that is not to huddle together, but to disperse. And they are dispersing throughout the world, I guess. I don't know. This is a military policy, to have little bits and pieces of military tools, or whatever you want to call them, and people, not one big army that will march. And they apparently right now have a lot of these places, these dispersed military installations that are dealing with what's called air bombs or something like that. And they are manufacturing these air, whatever they are, tools, bombs, in the Ukraine, in various parts along the Black Sea. That's what I heard, and I don't know how true or false it is. But these are air bombs. It's something that you throw, from what I understand. And then when it hits a place, it explodes, but not before. So you can throw this thing and it will explode only after in the air somehow, when it gets to a certain place. I really don't know, and I'm not a military person, I don't understand it. But this air bomb thing is the buzzword if you happen to be in the military world. And maybe you can find it if you're interested.
Okay.
And they are dispersed around at the bottom of the Ukraine.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Akpinar. I think we really have to wrap up now.
I think we should, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for listening to me.
Yeah, thank you. You gave us a very good idea of culture and history and geography and some of the political situation too. So, and also also connected to some Buddhist principles.
Not from many Buddhist principles.
Yes, many.
Say that. I started out with my Buddhist principles, which is the noble silence. And here I talk within the noble silence, which is a disconnect. And so, okay, thank you.
Thank you. So maybe Dharma Master Yong would like to make some announcements.
Why don't you go ahead, talk about next okay. Sunday's event?
All right, next Sunday is Jing Xiangshi will be speaking on Guanyin Bodhisattva and I, because it will be the Guanyin Bodhisattva's birthday celebration. So everyone, thank you very much and good evening.
You want to do the dedication of marriage?
Oh, yes. Okay. Let's put our palms together. May the merit from this practice adorn all the Buddha's lands. repay the kindness from above and rescue those in paths below. May all who see or hear of this resolve upon awakening, and when this body meets and be born together in the land of bliss. 3 bows. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. And we also dedicate that there be peace in between Ukraine and Russia. Amitofo.
Thank you, Dr. Akpinar, for the wonderful
Thank you
talk.
for listening.
And Thomas Evans moderate the talk. Also, Michael Lu for the translation to Chinese. Amitofo.
Amitofo.
Did the translation occur?
Yes, it was simultaneous. Thank you to Michael Yu.
That's very nice. I'm glad that that happened.
Yes, and Vietnamese too.
Okay, and in Vietnamese. Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
For the patience.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Akpinar. Good
Okay.
night.
All right.
Ah.